world? My name is Martin G of Corridor of Fame Academy. And if this is your first time joining, then what we're doing right now is we're actually going to be talking about different topics on Tech Tuesday. And what we're focusing on right now is how we can go from being consumers of tech to being producers of tech. There's so many different products out there right now that is taking away our attention, or that are that's pulling our attention in different ways. And so we want to talk about how we can go from being consumers of all of these products and all of these distractions to being some producers of some of these products. And again, if this is your first time joining, then what we did the last time is I kind of gave a brief introduction of AI and why we might want to use AI, and then I went into a project. So we're going to do a similar thing today. I'm going to go briefly over the previous presentation, and then we'll get right into the project. So if you've actually already watched this presentation, you feel free to fast forward a little bit. I may cover a couple of different things that I didn't cover the first time, but for the most part, we're going to be talking about the same topic: why you want to get into AI, what you the opportunities that exist in AI, and then the existing tools that are there, and then we're going to go into our project. So join me as we go forward. So to go from consumer to creator using the power of AI, there are so many different tools that are available to us right now, and many of us are not really aware of what's available to us. We're just kind of using them in a way where, or many of us don't realize that we can go from being consumers of them to being producers of them, or to tap into these in a different way. And so that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. We talked about why AI, and then some of the reasons for that are financial reasons. The global market is actually going to be expanding. The global AI market is going to be expanding. As you can see, there's a lot of opportunity for financial reasons, or there are a lot of financial benefits to being in AI. It's projected that it's going to grow from 515 billion to 2 trillion in 2030. So there's a lot of opportunity for that. And you have to ask yourself, well, what side of that equation are you going to be on? Are you going to be one of the people who's using your resources and using your financial resources to buy into these markets, or to be a consumer in these markets? Or are you going to tap into the other side and become a producer of it, to where you are getting a piece of that $2 trillion by 2030? There's also the job security that it will offer, because AI is growing so much. As long as you're able, so there's this perception that AI is going to replace people. It absolutely will. It will absolutely replace people. It has already replaced people, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing for everyone. What you can do is tap into it and leverage it and learn how to use it, so that you can be able to be a part of the new jobs that are created. And then there's unlimited potential, because again, since it's a newer field to the masses, it's not a new field at all, but it's a newer field to the masses. Because of that, now people are starting to, when people begin to use it, they'll start to be able to add some components to it that these big companies haven't done. What typically happens in a lot of these industries, especially the music industry, you think about the entertainment industry in general, the people that are targeted as far as the consumers are typically the ones who almost dictate what the entertainment looks like, because what they show their attention towards is what these people will create for them. And I know there's some nuances to that, but what I'm really getting at is your culture is what really can dictate and can drive how the technology is going to be used and impacting your world. So as long as people are using and injecting their culture into this technology, then we stand a chance to have an unlimited potential, because there are always different ways that our cultures are embedded into systems. So there are some existing AI tools, again, in healthcare, finance, manufacturing. There's so many other ones as well. we talked about Remini before. Remini is one that a lot of people are using, especially at this time right now. We've probably seen a lot of people who are generating images, and they are, they have images of them holding babies. They have images of them looking completely different than what they actually look like, and that is what Remini offers. And then you have ChatGPT, which is probably one of the most popular ones right now. And again, just the ones that people are aware of, because there are hundreds and possibly even thousands of AI tools that are in existence right now. But essentially, you can use ChatGPT as a chatbot, as a virtual assistant. You can use it for many, many different tasks. And we're actually going to be using ChatGPT today in our project. We used it in our project previously, and we're gonna do another project as well using ChatGPT. Because so from this standpoint, a lot of people are using these tools from the standpoint of a consumer, but they don't realize that they're actually empowered to do more than just consume the product and just be an end user. And so what they're not realizing is that they can become a producer. So how can you leverage existing tools? Well, ChatGPT is not the company itself. It's actually owned by a company called OpenAI. And OpenAI has ChatGPT on one side, but there's also a back end to it where there are something called APIs that are made publicly available for you to use. So instead of just going straight to ChatGPT and giving it a prompt, you can actually become a middleman and make your own prompts. You can structure your content in a way where people can go to you, and they will go to your site, and they will go to your site, and based on whatever you want for them to give you, you can give them something back. That may not make a lot of sense right now, but essentially it is using an API. It's called an application programming interface. And what typically happens with that is where a lot of people will use something that, let's say you go to a restaurant. As this example here is, so it's like a waiter in a restaurant. You give your order to the waiter. The kitchen prepares the food, and an API is kind of like that. So the kitchen prepares the food, and then they give it back to the waiter, and the waiter brings it to you. Now, the waiter is not the one who's the waiter is not the one who's cooking your food. It may seem like the waiter is the one that is responsible for your food, but it's really the kitchen. The waiter is only taking your request, and then the waiter is taking that request to the kitchen. The kitchen is going to perform whatever it takes to make whatever it is that you've asked for, and then they're going to give it back to the waiter, and then the waiter is going to give it to you. So if you can think about that concept, that's really how an API works. An API just sits in the middle of you, the end user, and the back end that is doing most of the work. APIs are everywhere. So if you've ever used a weather app, if you've ever used social media, if you've ever used a calendar app, then you've interacted with an API. If whatever you're watching this video on right now, you're using probably one or many APIs to get this video to you. So how to use an API. So we talked about an API, but how do you use it? Well, you want to first use an API. To use an API, you want to be able to find documentation that tells you exactly how you want to get the information to the API, or what the API can actually do. You want to be able to understand how you can get the information to the API so that you can get something useful out of it. And you need to have good documentation. A good API is going to have documentation that tells exactly what it is. And then you want to determine your project. You want to know, again, what it is that you want to actually do. In order to use an API, you have to have a reason for using it. And then you want to generate an API key. So an API key is something like a key, for lack of a better word, but it's something like an access code that gives you access into that API, that confirms who you are. It authenticates who you are with that API to say, if this person, the end user, goes to the API, I know who they are. I'm going to send this information back to them and only them. And again, if that doesn't make sense, we'll cover it a little bit later. And then you want to be able to make API requests. So if we think about that waiter again, you make your request to the waiter. You don't go directly to a kitchen if you're in a restaurant. You make your request through the waiter. The waiter takes it to the kitchen. So in order to make a request to an API, or in order to make a request to get some information, there has to be something in between to make a request to. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And so why should you build your own project? Well, there are a lot of different reasons. We've already talked about why or how the financial markets are expecting to expand over double in the next 7 years. Well, there are other opportunities for you as well. The job market is going to also increase, and you want to be able to use these like Lego pieces. I think of technology like Lego puzzles or like Lego pieces where you can just put things together. There's no right or wrong way. There are so many different solutions for the same thing. And so when you can inject your own culture, when you can inject your own mind into a project, then that's where you're being at the utmost creative. All right. So before we get into it, I'm just going to talk about a couple of things because it will help to know. It will help you in this project to know a couple of things about source control, to also know how source control works. And I'm not going to go too deeply into this right now because I've kind of covered it already in the previous one. So if you do have questions about it, make sure you comment below. If there's something that doesn't make quite enough sense and you need some more direction, then definitely comment below and just give me some feedback about what areas you may need a little more assistance in. But essentially, source control is a way to save your work in a way that can be shared across multiple computers, multiple people. Like if you have a big team, everyone can kind of share their work, and then you keep a track of the history of your work. And after that, another thing that helps to know is, so we're going to be building this using React.js. This is going to be a web application, and React.js is the framework that we're going to be using. Again, I'm not going to go too deeply into this right now because we've kind of covered that already, but it will help to know this. If you don't know it, let me know as well. And it also helps to know about the command line. If you've never used the command line before, then it helps. It's not absolutely required to be an expert at the command line, but if you are familiar with just opening up a terminal window on a Mac or PowerShell on Windows or even just command line on the Windows, then it really helps. But again, not 100% required. So, and then you want to have an environment where you can actually write the code, where you can save your work. I'm calling this an IDE, which is an integrated development environment. I'm specifically going to be using Visual Studio Code, but there are tons out there that you can use. So if you have your own preference of one, feel free to use that. All right, now let's talk about the project. So the previous project that we did was related to, generating images. So we are actually going to upgrade that project and we're going to do something a little different. Now, what you will need the same things this time. You will need to have GitHub. You can use GitHub Desktop if you're not that comfortable on the command line. We're going to use Homebrew, iTerm2, or Terminal. You don't have to use iTerm. Node.js, an OpenAI account, and you need Visual Studio Code, as I mentioned, and then we're going to use Yarn as well. So give me one moment. All right, so before I go into OpenAI, I actually want to go quickly over the API, how an API works a little bit more. So as you can see here, we have let's say we have a web app in our browser. So this is kind of what we're going to be doing. You have a web app in your browser which is connected to the internet. So the internet, whenever you type something into the web app, make a request, you're going to type it in here and make a request over the internet. It's going to traverse through the internet and go to an API. The API is going to, depending on however you formulate that request, the API is going to understand it. You have to form that request in a certain way for the API to understand. So once you formulate that request in a way that the API understands, it's going to send that request to the web server. And the web server is essentially owned by the domain, whoever owns that API. So that web server will get that request, and then it's going to parse that request based on whatever you sent. It's going to parse that request, and then the information that it gets, it's actually going to get from its backend database. And then once the database gets that information, it's going to send it back to the web server, and then it's going to send it back to the API. And then that API is going to send that information back over the internet and back into your web app browser, or back into your web app in the browser. And so this is how that flow is going to be. And there are sometimes there are different components along the way, but this is the generic or general basic structure of how an API is going to work. So I just wanted to cover that really quickly. And another thing that I want to talk about is, let's say you want to make a request, you make the request. Again, you're going to give it certain information, and which are going to be called parameters, and then you're going to get information back. Now, the last time that we did a project, again, we talked about how to create an image, an automatic image that would generate based on a prompt that we gave it. So this time, we're actually going to do something a little different. We're going to do what's called a completion. And so OpenAPI has these things where there are completions. Now, this is the documentation for OpenAPI's API. Now, a completion here is the definition of it. It says, given a prompt, the model will return one or more predicted completions and can also return the probability of alternative tokens at each position. And they actually recommend most users use their chat completions API. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a look at this. And this is what we're going to be using to create our application today. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to show you what we're going to create before we create it. And as I always say, you want to start with the end in mind. So you have, in order to create something, you have to know what it is that you're going to create. So let's go ahead and start this locally. Now it's still, it's pretty basic as far as what it looks like and what it does, but the goal is just to show you that you can create something. So if I say I wanted to create an essay for a topic, we're going to create an essay based on any topic that we give it. Now, if I want to say how to leverage AI in the workplace. Now, it's not going to generate a very long one because I have it configured to not generate a long essay, but as you can see, it's processing right now, and so whenever it's finished, it's going to give us an essay. It is really just a paragraph, by the way. But this is what we're going to build. And once we're finished with this, you're going to see how you can tweak this, maybe to give you something longer, to give you something shorter, you can make it look a different way. But again, our biggest focus today is not going to be on how it looks, but we're just going to be mainly going to be focusing on the fact that it works. Okay? So let's actually go ahead and get started. Now, if you recall, the last time we were actually we started in GitHub, and so I've actually created a template from the previous image generator one, and so I just made a copy of it, or I cloned it from the image generator and created another one. So I actually will need to update the name of this. But right now we have a project called image generator, and that's what we're going to be creating. So you can follow the steps that are here and get your project set up. I've actually already done that first step, so I'm going to show you in a moment. All right, and now, because we've already created a project that we are starting from, I'm going to, we've already created the image generator, so I'm not going to start all the way from scratch like I did the last time. If you need some help with getting that project up and running, then let me know. But I'm not, or actually you can take a look at the previous video, or you can comment below if you are running into issues, but I'm not going to start all the way from scratch this time. So at this point, we already have a few things installed. We have Git installed, we have Homebrew installed, we have Yarn and NPM, or Yarn and Node installed, and we are ready to begin our project. So I'm going to open this project. This is the location of it on my computer. I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code. Now I have a shortcut installed on my machine in order to open Visual Studio Code using just the shortcut. So I'm going to do that. If you don't have that, it's fine. Just open, you can find Visual Studio Code or whatever your IDE of choice is. You can just find that on your machine. And actually, I did not do that step already. So I'm going to actually go ahead and do a git clone so that you can see. And remember, you can also do this in GitHub Desktop as well, which will be easier for people who are not comfortable with the command line. So I'm just going to run git clone and paste the URL there. All right. So now that it's cloned the project, I can now open this in Visual Studio Code, and as you can see, this is an empty file. So in Visual Studio Code, you want to make sure that you're on the Explorer tab, and then your project files will be here, will be listed here. So there are a couple of things to note. We've talked about this OpenAI key in the last one. So or the API key, we've talked about that in the last one. So once we generate our API key through OpenAPI, this is where we're going to paste it. And we also went over the package.json file, but I'm just going to change a couple of things in here from image to essay. And I'm going to save that. And let me just, so this is, when I run this, it's actually going to look like, it's going to be an image generator, not the essay generator that we just saw. So I'm into a couple of issues. Once you do a git clone, it's going to create a new folder for you. And once you do a git clone, it's going to create the file in a folder, and you just need to go into that folder. So that's what I was doing wrong here. All right. Now, once you're in there, and so I had some extra files that need to go. I'm just going to delete those. But once you're in that folder, then you can do a yarn install. So yarn install is going to install everything that's in the package or everything that's in that package JSON. It's going to install all the dependencies that are needed. So I'm going to pause this while these packages install. All right, it didn't take that long because some of these packages are already on my machine. So now that it's installed, now I want to do yarn dev. And remember, this is not going to look like an essay generator that we saw already. It's going to look more like the image generator that we created in the last Tech Talk. So once it's finished, as you can see, it is loaded. So now it's an image generator. So I remember the last time we were using 3 chocolate Labrador retrievers quite a few times. So if I actually run this is not going to work. But I want to know, do you know why it's not going to work? I'm going to run this, and if you guessed it, it is because the OpenAPI key is not configured. So in order to do that, we need to go to OpenAPI and generate the API key. So I'm going to just show you really quickly how to do that. If you are in OpenAPI, you'll go to your project and then you'll click View API Keys. And once you go to that, you will click a new secret key and it will generate a key for you. So that's the key that you want to use. And I am not going to show you that while I copy and paste mine. But what you do want to do, I will show you this actually. What you do want to do is go into your project file. You can do one or two things. You can copy this file that's here and paste it as a new file called .env, or you can just rename this file as or actually what I'm going to do the first method that I said. So I'm going to copy and then I'm going to paste. I want this to be, hang on. I'm going to rename this to .env, and I want to make sure that it's in the essay generator folder. So I'm just going to drag that there. And then in here is where you will update the API key. So go ahead and do that step if you haven't already. I am going to do that. And then once you have it, you can save your file and then you are ready to begin. So I am going to go ahead and let's see if I can try this again. Okay, so we still have this working, and my internet connection is actually really slow today for whatever reason. I'm actually traveling right now, so I'm not in my typical location, but I'm going to, as you can see, this is working. So what we want to do is we want to reconfigure this to be an essay generator. Now I'm going to open up a new file, or I'm actually going to run this in another. I'm going to run the essay generator just so that we'll see what we are building again. So when I run this is actually going to run on a different port because I'm running, it's going to run on a different port. So remember, I'll just use another essay, learning to play tennis after 30, create an essay. Now notice there are a couple things here. We have a spinner here that is letting us know that this is still running. And then we have this this background here with our text here. So it's, if you did the previous project, then this probably looks very similar, or should look very similar. There are just a couple of differences, So I'm gonna actually show these side by side, and hopefully you will see. You will see that most of this is going to be the same. There are a couple of differences, yes, but everything at the top minus the name here is going to be the same for the most part. Instead of an image, we're going to be generating an essay, and then instead of showing an image here, we're going to show the essay. And then this, previously we were downloading an image, but we don't have a need to download the essay. If you want to do that, we can do that. But essentially, we need to use something to generate an essay. Now, previously we were using code. If you recall, just one second. If you can recall, we talked about how to use an API. Now again, the API for OpenAPI will give you documentation about how to use this, how to use the API, how to formulate your request to the API to get the information that you want. And so previously, again, we went over images. So if I just go to the image one, we were creating an image, and this is what we use. So we did an OpenAPI create image, and they've actually changed this since the last time. But anyway, so let's go into our project and see where we would where we used that before. So before we were generating an image, this is the API call that we made. We did an API, OpenAPI create image. So instead of a create image now, we want to do something. Now you may say, oh, well, we want to do a create essay. Well, the API is not called create essay. What it actually is called is the completion. So instead of create image, we want to do what is called a create completion. Everything else is going to be the same. So hopefully you can see that our work is not going to require as much as it did previously. So there are a couple of things to do. We're going to need to not display the image, and then instead we're going to show an essay, and then we're going to just need to update what the image or what this API call actually is. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let me, instead of this, so I'm going to keep this code here for now, and I'm just going to create a couple more comments. So instead of create image with OpenAPI, we're going to create a completion with OpenAPI. And then we'll want to send the essay back, because it's going to give us an essay. Once we give it the information that it needs, it's going to send us an essay back, and so we'll want to send it back the way we did previously. So that's one thing that we'll need to do. And I'm just going to add some more empty space here just to make a note that that is what we are going to be doing. And then this image prompt. So before we were getting an image prompt and then validating that the image or that the image prompt was valid. This time we could technically leave this as it is, but we're not going to do that. We're going to make sure that this references exactly what it is that we're creating. So we want this to be an essay prompt. Okay. And I'm going to go, before we do that, let's actually go into our front end code so that it looks like what we're expecting. So, and yes, I have written this already. I do have this project completed. So I am going to do a little bit of copying and pasting so that we can get through it a little quicker, and so that it makes make some more sense. All right. So really, because like I mentioned, most of the work is already done for us. We just need to change a couple of components here. So we need to change, the first one that we would want to change would be the, let's just change the wording. So right now it still says image. Let's just change all of that to SA. Now that's not going to really do much work, much change as far as functionality, but let's just go ahead and do that. So there are a lot of references to image in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do this an easier way. I'm going to select this image. Now notice there's one with the lowercase and one with an uppercase that it would select. I don't want to change the casing of these. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go to, I'm actually going to press, on a Mac, I'm going to press Shift Command in the letter F. No, actually, I'm not going to do that. On the Mac, I'm going to press Command F, and then it will pop up this find window. If I click the drop down, it will show me replace. So I'm going to type image here, and then I want to make sure that it checks the casing as well. So I'm going to match the casing by selecting that, and then I'm going to replace that with SA. Now I want to go ahead and replace all in this file. So it has replaced everything that said image with SA, lowercase image with lowercase SA. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the uppercase. So I'm going to also replace all. Now we are ready. So we want to make sure that, so we've done that part. Now if I save this, I don't think it'll fail. Okay, all right. So now we see it shows SA generator. Cool. It's not going to display an SA, but it does show SA. The next thing that we want to do, let's say, so there was this download function that we have for the image. We actually don't need this. So I'm going to comment this for now. We can delete it, but I'm just going to comment it for now. Okay. And whenever an essay is created, or whenever we type something here, we want to be able to click create essay. So I want to make sure that that functionality, it is there. So we are saving this. I want to make sure that with that functionality, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're saving the information properly. So when we select the button, or when we click this button to create an essay, what that's actually going to do is the form, because this is in a form, the form is going to capture that information right here. This is where it's going to capture the information that we have, that we type in that form, and it's going to save it. So whenever we click the button, it's going to save that information that we type in there as the essay prompt. So it's going to call this function here to set essay prompt, and then it's going to get the value and set it as that value. So notice at the top we have a variable called essay prompt. So this is where it's going to set that value that we typed in that form. And once we get that, once we press the submit button, this is the function that is going to execute. So here it's going to call the API generate file or function that we already created. So that's going to be the same. This essay prompt, all of this is going to be the same. All of this is really going to be the same. And so it's going to send a request to that file, hope that it works. If it does work, then it's going to set the essay result. Now, if there is an error, somewhere along the way inside of making that request, it's going to give us an error. It's going to show us what that error is. So I'm gonna just walk through this real quick, and I don't want to just like stumble over this or run through it too fast. But again, we're executing what's called a try catch. So we're going to try to do everything that is within these two parentheses here within the try. And then if anything in here fails, we're going to catch it. We're going to catch the error, and then we're going to print and display the error. So it's going to first send a request to that file. And this is kind of like our own API, but I don't want to go too deeply into that. But this is the request. We're sending a request to that file. It's going to be a post request with these headers, with this header, and then this is the body. We're going to give it the SA prompt, and we're going to save that whatever it gets into a response. When it gets back, we're going to wait for the response. We're going to get the message that it sends back, and we're going to save that as data. And so if there is a status that is not a 200, that's what this means. A 200 typically means that it's successful. If there's something that's not successful, then we want to throw an error. If it is successful or otherwise, then we want to set the SA result, which is this here. We want to set that to the value from data. Hopefully that makes sense to you. All right. Now, let's save that. I want to save that, and it's not going to work. Again, it's not going to work just yet. But let's go back into the generate, because now we want to make sure that generate is going to give us exactly what we expect. So we want to do the same find and replace in here. So I want to, instead of image prompt, I want to use SA and SA prompt. So I'm going to select that with Command and F, or select it and then press Command and F, and then I'm going to type SA for the lowercase, and then I'm going to match the case to make sure that it's matching, and then I'm going to replace all. Now, I believe, now there's, so to get the SA prompt, or well, I didn't cover this part in this one because we did it in the previous one, but once we have that API key configured, or once we have it in that file, these 3 lines right here are what are actually going to get the file or get that API key for us and validate it, or at least it's going to store it as a configuration. This line here is going to attempt to make an OpenAPI connection. So this is using the key that you provided, OpenAPI, and this API library is going to it knows what to do with that key, and this is how it's going to validate that you are the person who owns this API key, or you are the person who has access to OpenAPI. All right. Now, if it's not configured, then you'll get, or if it's not configured properly, you'll get the error message, which we saw already. So let's just move on from that. And the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to get the SA prompt here. And the SA prompt is what is being sent from the body of the previous file. All right, let's go back into the previous file. And remember, what we're sending, this is the request that we're sending, and we have a body and SA prompt right here. Okay. So that is what we're sending right here. And so it's going to do a check to see, or it's going to make sure that it's not empty. That's what this is essentially doing. If it is empty, then we're going to send an error back to that front end. Okay. If it's not empty, then we need to go ahead and make our call to OpenAPI. We don't want to send a request to, so the reason we have this here is because we don't want to send a request to OpenAPI that is empty. We don't want to send a blank request. So this is more so like a sanity check to make sure that you have the information that you're looking for. Okay, so let's go to OpenAPI and let's see what this should look like. So as you can see here, and as I mentioned before, when you come here, so some APIs will show you the language, will show you different languages to use. At the time of this recording, OpenAPI is still using DaVinci 003. However, they are getting ready to update to something else. The newer version is just not available just yet. So for purposes of this recording, DaVinci is the one to use. But in some APIs, you will see that they have different languages. Some will have a lot more languages than just these options here. And so if we were coding in Python, we would select Python. This is what it would look like. But since we're using Node.js, this is what we're going to be using, or it's going to look like this. And because we've already configured it, we've already done these steps, these first 5 lines, all we really need to copy are 6 through 11 in this case. So this is going to be the sample request. And before I copy it, I just want to show you something. These parameters, these are really just saying this is what you can use here. So this model, prompt, max tokens, temperature, these are called parameters. And what that's essentially saying is this is what we want. These are the things that we have options to ask for, and this is what we want them defined as. So think about that waiter example again. When a waiter is taking your order, right? Let's just say that pretend that this is a waiter creating an order. So this is creating an order. Now the parameters would be, let's say, food, or let's say drink. So your drink of choice. Do you want water? This is, and like, let's say this was, instead of model, it was drink here. You would put water or orange juice or something like that that is related to the drink. If there was a meal here, or a course 1 or something like that, then this would be the name of that course. If this was it, let's say you had dessert as an option, then you would put dessert here. So these are the parameters that are available for you to use. Now, some places will only have, some restaurants may not have 4 or 5 courses. Some may only have 1. Or some may not have dessert. So if they don't have it, this wouldn't be a parameter here. But these are the parameters that OpenAPI has made available for you to request. And over here, you can see descriptions of all of those parameters. We're not going to use all of them, but I just want you to see that these are the parameters that are available. And this is how you can tweak yours to do what you want it to do. So we can copy this as it is. We can copy that and we can paste it. We're going to paste this. Remember, we're going to paste this where it says create a completion with OpenAPI, because that's what we want to do. Now, I'm not going to paste that one just yet because I've actually already done this. And, well, no, I'm going to paste this as it is first. All right, now notice I get an error because it's saying I can't rename that variable. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I'm going to delete that. Because now we don't need it. We just have to make sure that we're sending the right information back. So now that I have a response, now this is going to use that model that we saw there. So by the time you watch this video, depending on when you watch it, this may need to be changed. This may need to be changed to something else. But notice that this model name right here, this model parameter, is going to coincide with this value here. It's going to coincide with that. And if you select a different model, it will give you a different model name. But I just want to make that point because I have read the documentation that says it's going to update soon. It will be end of life by January 2024. So just heads up on that. All right. Now, right now, so we're not going to mess with the model. We're going to keep it as it is. The prompt, we want to give it an essay. But instead of using this prompt, so the last time I actually kept this prompt as it is, or as it is right now, but we're going to go ahead and modify that. So I'm going to give a slightly different prompt than what's here. I'm just going to copy it and paste it first, and then I'll explain. So I'm saying in 200 words or less, generate an essay about, and then I want to generate an essay about the essay prompt. So whatever it is that we give it, I want to generate an essay about it. And then the next step that we want to make sure that we do is we want to send the essay back to the front end. So this is technically the back end of our application, where this generate file, and then we're sending this information back to the front end once we get it from OpenAPI. So it's really like an API by itself. We are making a request to our own API, which is making a request to another API. I hope you get it. It's like Inception, okay? So we can save that, but I'm not going to save it just yet. So what I want to do next is I actually had some debug stuff in there that I don't need right now, so I'm not going to put that there. So essentially, once we send this request, we should get something. We should get it back. If it works, perfect. If not, we got problems. But this error handling that's already down here, so we're catching. So remember, we're going to do a try, and we're trying to do a completion, create a completion, and then we're going to send it back if it works. Okay? If that doesn't work, we're going to catch the error. So what's the error that happens if it fails? Okay, does the error have a response? If it has a response, then let's print the response, and then let's log the response to our console, and then let's show a status of the error status, whatever that response is, or whatever that error response status is. We're going to set that as our response, our result status. And you know, there's a whole way that you can dive into error handling. That's not what this is. But just this is a simple way just to kind of catch these errors so that we know what's going on. But so if it doesn't have an error response, but it's still an error, then we want to just log a generic error that says this OpenAPI request error, and then give us the error message. Set the status to 500. Okay, so right now this should work. This should work as far as sending information back. Now, it's not going to work on the front end just yet because, well, let me actually just refresh and show you why. So let's say now we wanted to generate an essay about passive income streams, and we click that button to generate. It's not going to show an error, and it's not that it failed. It didn't fail. However, there's something happening here. So notice before we had an image here. We haven't changed the image just yet. So it's still thinking that there's supposed to be an image here. So let's go back and let's correct that. So now we'll go to our front end and let's modify what's happening here. So before we were just showing, we had an image created here. So once we got an essay result, we were once we had an image result previously, we were going to show the image. So we don't need to do that now. We don't have an image to display. Now we have an essay to display. So instead of image displaying, we need to show the essay. So I'm actually going to change this format just a little bit. And so I'm going to, and we also don't need to download anything. So we don't need this at all. And I'm just going to delete that, and I'm going to paste something else. So now I'm saying, if there's an essay result, then I want to create a paragraph tag or paragraph tag, and I want inside of that paragraph tag to be the essay result. So I'm going to save this. It should actually display the essay under here. Now it won't look pretty because this CSS doesn't exist yet, but I'm just going to save that and hope for the best. Okay, so it doesn't show that just yet. Now what I want to do is I'm going to let me just refresh and see. So I'm going to do passive income streams, an essay on passive income streams, and let's wait for it. Okay, it finished, but it doesn't have the value yet. So that is an interesting thing here. So it doesn't have the value, so we need to figure out why. I'm inspecting this HTML to see if it has a paragraph tag. So that's what I'm doing here right now. You don't have to do this, but for me, it's actually kind of helpful to see what's going on. So I see that it has not created a paragraph tag, and it should have. So that means to me that somehow this essay result is not being set properly. So in order to test that, I want to do a couple of things. And actually, so this was something that I ran into before, and this is actually not called essay result. This is just called result. So if I save that, well, that's one thing. Okay, so I just want to do a couple of things. There are a couple of things that I want to modify, but before I do that, I am in debug mode right now to figure out why I'm not getting the response that I expect on the screen. Now, what I can tell you is that it's working because I see that I'm getting a response on the command line. So I see that it's actually generating an essay, but the essay itself is not being presented on the front end. And so for that, I need to figure out why that is the case. All right. So I want to insert a couple of debug statements, and yeah. Okay, real quick. Two things. It's not that it was failing. It's not failing at all. It is working. And this is what happens whenever sometimes you have multiple things running. So I was actually looking at the previous, the working example, seeing this response. This is not what I'm getting right now. But anyway, back to where we are. So notice that it says dogs running in the. So I actually I did another essay. I said create an essay about dogs running in the park. All right. Now it doesn't give me anything past dogs running in the, which is a problem. But notice that it does give me a paragraph. So the issue that we are having here is that we're cutting this off. We're cutting the response off before it has a chance to finish. So I'm going to modify a couple of things in here, and these are some of the parameters that we have the option to modify. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the max tokens from 7, because this is what we copied here, but I'm going to change that to 1,000. And the bigger this number, the more information that you will get back. And I'm going to also change the temperature from 0 to 0.2. Now I'm going to save that. And when I come back to my essay generator, it should have already compiled that, but I'm going to click learning to play tennis after 30 again. And I'm going to click create essay. Now you can see that we have this text being generated. And that's what we were expecting to see, right? So we could copy this and we can use it. Now I'm going to take this just a step further, and then I'm going to inject the CSS, or just to make this look like what the other project looked like. And we are literally almost done. So it's really just a couple of items to change from the previous project to this one. But I'm just going to go into my index.module.css, and I'm just going to update it completely. I'm just copying and pasting from one to the other. And if I go back, you'll see that this is generated. So we can stop there. But notice there was one more thing that we had on the other project that we did not necessarily do on this one yet. So if I go to passive income streams and click essay, notice there was this spinner here. So I want to do that just so we kind of know what's going on, or we're just not sitting there just hoping that it will show something and not really knowing what's going on. So I'm going to add that spinner, and we can stop here. We can literally stop right now. The project is done. But I just want to add a couple of little tweaks to it just to finish it off a little bit. And if I go back into my index.js, so this is all going to be on the front end. So if I go back into this file, what I'm aiming for is to know, and just let's think about this before I write the code for it. I'm saying, is this generating? I want to know if this file is generating, or if after I click the button, if I don't have an essay result yet, then I want to spin. So I need to know the state of the application, and so I'm going to need to inject, or I'm going to need to extract the state from it. So I want to think, is this loading? If it's loading, then I want to show the button, or I want to show the spinner. If it's not, then don't show it. So I'm going to paste this, another variable that I'm going to check for whether or not it's loading. All right, and then it's really simple. So I'll use that, and then whenever the let's go step by step. So I'm creating that first. I create this to determine whether it's loading or not, and to determine what the state of loading is, and then I want to be able to set the state of loading. All right, so I will go from there. In order to change the state to say that it's loading, I need to do that once I click the button, once I click the submit form. So that's what I want to do, and I'm going to copy a line here, and I'm going to do this right under, I want to do it inside the form. Actually, don't need to put that inside the form. Oh yeah, I do. But this is going to check to see, is it loading? So is loading true? Is it set to true? If it is set to true, then I want you to show a spinner. Now the spinner is already defined inside of the CSS, but if it's not, then I want you to just show nothing, and that's what this empty space is here, or that's what this is. So then, but how does it know to show? How does it know to stop? Now it needs to know when to stop once it actually has an essay result. So this is where I would set the image, or set is loading to false. So we can do that here. So I would just say false. Now, if I go back and making sure I'm on the right one, if I go back and let's do an essay about dogs running in the park again. If I click generate an essay, which I did, I actually probably need to refresh then, because I did not see the spinner. So let's try it again. And no. Okay. I know what it is. I've actually missed a step. So, this is just saying, is this loading? If it's not loading, or if it is loading, then to display a spinner. If it's not loading, don't show anything. And then I actually say, I'm telling it to stop loading, but I never actually tell it to start loading. And so that's the important part that I'm missing. So set is loading to true. And we want to do that whenever we get to unsubmit. That's whenever this happens. So if I save that, and let me just refresh this page. And if I go to passive income streams, create an essay, now you can see we have a spinner. Okay, so this is, so it's still spinning. All right, perfect. Now we're done. That's it. That is absolutely all we needed to do. So if you are interested in this project, or if you're just interested in learning about other projects and how you can begin to leverage APIs, then let me know. But essentially, we have done exactly that. We've used an API to generate. Some a web app. So if we wanted to, we could repurpose this web app to and put it in a place where other people can use it. So now instead of going to ChatGPT to say, generate me an essay, you can use this web app, this essay generator web app that we've just created. Now there are more steps to this, right? There are steps to actually deploy this, which is what this will be called, to deploy it, to make it available for other people to use. There are other things that you can do to make this more secure. There are other steps that you can take to make this look aesthetically better, and so many. There are other steps to take, but this is the basic concept of the fact that you can leverage technology to do something for you. Now, there are a few things to do to clean up this file, so we can do that now. Remember, we don't need this download image file, so we can delete that. And any of the old anything that we commented out and didn't delete, we can go ahead and delete that. And I'm sure we can clear up the empty space, white space, and all of that. But essentially, our project is done. So this has been the second example of how we can leverage AI to create something, rather than to create something as a producer, rather than just being a consumer of it. Hopefully you're starting to see now that there are other ways to tap into ChatGPT, for instance. There are other ways to tap into other forms of technology that are existing right now. So we're using this example of ChatGPT and OpenAPI, but there are thousands of other APIs that are publicly available. There are APIs that are available for Meta, for Instagram, for TikTok. There are APIs that are available for YouTube. There are APIs available for almost anything that you can think of. Think about something that you use on a regular basis from a big name company, and as far as like on the internet, and think of a functionality that doesn't exist that you would like to exist. If you can think about that, then it's possible that they have an API that you can tap into to tweak and to make it more useful for yourself and make it more useful for other people. So once you can start to tap into these APIs that are publicly available, you will see that a lot of them have done the hard work for you. They've done most of the hard work, but now you just need to use what they've started and build your own. Let's go ahead and proceed forward in this world by starting to produce more and not just consuming. Because if we don't, then we'll find ourselves always chasing the next thing to figure out how we can buy this next thing or how we can buy that thing. And it's a never-ending cycle. So the next time that you are about to use ChatGPT or some other AI tool, ask yourself, can I create this myself? Can I tap into their API? Are they tapping into some other API to create this? What makes them any different from me? So now hopefully you feel more empowered to be able to dig deeper into some of these technology pieces that are pieces to the puzzle that are just laying out there, ready for you to grab. Again, my name is Martin G of Corridor of Fame Academy. If you have any questions, if any of this has been useful for you, then definitely feel free to comment below. If you have any issues where maybe you are stumbling on a couple of steps, if you want more information about a certain step, if you want more information about maybe source control or understanding how to use an IDE, or maybe understanding more about what React.js is, then let me know as well. Feel free to leave some feedback, and we'll continue to make more content that is relevant to you. Hopefully this has been helpful, and I will talk to you next time. But today, this has been another Tech Talk where we're talking about APIs and how we can go from being consumers of technology to being producers of technology using the power of AI. Take care.